Philip Pidot, Tappanwood Drive. If I can turn back to 6D for a moment on the tax certs. I understand that the Paula Corporation issue wasn't specifically foreseen, but as you mentioned, the rough number of 800,000 to 900,000 a year is pretty foreseeable for the last several years. It's in that neighborhood. And if I can just really quickly read a couple of lines. This is from the most recent critique from the state comptroller of our 2015 budget. It says, proposed budget contains an insufficient appropriation of $100,000 for the payment of tax cert refunds, which have averaged $814,000 over the last 3 years. City officials have indicated their intention to use debt to finance the balance of the 2015 tax cert settlements above the existing appropriation. This is what you just mentioned. We had always planned to use borrowing. The comptroller goes on to say, the continued practice of using debt to pay for these operating costs is imprudent. Tax cert claims are a routine cost of doing business. As such, the city officials should treat tax cert costs as routine expenditures and pay for them from annual appropriations. So it seems that the $100,000 was not only bad forecasting, but that it's continued fiscal malpractice to keep paying for these normal operating costs by issuing new debt on the backs of the taxpayers. So given whether or not we actually achieve a surplus this year or whether we can actually find offsetting funds from existing appropriations, you mentioned another item from the agenda tonight that we saved, I guess, upwards of $250,000 on this 6G, the island pump and tank storage tank removal that's only costing us $27,000 versus $300,000 that was appropriated. Maybe that's a good start. $200,000 would take some of the sting out of the $600,000. So to get to my question, actually, it's two questions. One is, could you undertake a process where you might be able to, as the comptroller suggests, find offsetting appropriations? And two is, do you have any plans to revise the budgeting or the forecasting protocol for next year so we don't once again forecast 100 when we know it's going to be closer to $1 million?
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's a real simple formula. If you don't have the revenues for something like this, you're either going to borrow it or increase the taxes. And the city has never had enough revenue. If you want to tell me where I'm going to find $900,000 or $600,000, I'm more than happy to listen. But the fact is, municipal budgets are very expense-driven, and the one thing that we don't have is revenue. So what sources do we have for revenue? We can raise the taxes. We can take your suggestion and try to cut expenses 10% over 2 years, which I think doesn't really work, because if you take a look at, let's say, we'll approximate it a $50 million budget. You have $20 million in payroll. You have $10 million in benefits. You have another $10 million approximately in debt service, so it leaves you $10 million, which basically pays for utilities, for assorted contractual services, for assortment of things. So to try to cut $2.5 million out of a budget, it's pretty tough unless you're going to start laying off a bunch of people. And if you do layoffs in the city, what it does is, because it's contractual, you start at the bottom. So you start laying off the guys that are making $40,000, $50,000 a year, and then until you hit something significant, you're going to deplete your workforce. At some point, you do layoffs, you're going to cut your services. As we grow the revenue, and that's what we're hoping to do with things like some of these development projects, we hope to increase the revenue stream. And with that, hopefully, we'll be getting some. On this last budget, we did everything we could. Listen. We had one-shot revenue, and the controller doesn't like that. The controller's report is a template, and you're a pretty good financial guy, I know that, okay? But the controller's report is a template, and it doesn't really work, okay, in a city that really doesn't have the revenue, okay? Every year, when you try to control expenses or cut things down, the fact is you have contractual obligations that the revenue, it's tough to meet. You take police contract, you take CSEA contract, you take medical benefits. Everything goes up. We probably have $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 a year that the expenses go up. with no revenue. And then as soon as a project comes on, everybody's trying to kill it, okay? The first thing everybody does here, it's a knee-jerk reaction. We don't need it. We don't need any development. We don't need anything else, okay? Glen Cove is fine. Well, the fact is, tell it to the merchants in downtown, okay? When downtown closes at 5 o'clock at night and there's nobody around, okay? And then you can't have it both ways. You can't tell me there's too much traffic, there's not enough business. I mean, we're trying to get something here to move the city forward. And I've used the example before. You know, we can't turn on a dime here, okay? It's a big ship, and it takes time, okay? And we're trying to do things to get us to that point, but we're not close, and it's going to take time. But I think we're making some of the right moves. We're trying to bring the Piazza project on, and it's not... And the juice in a lot of these projects is not just with like the sale of the property and stuff. The juice is in what it's going to do to the local economy, the benefits that are going to come down. Hopefully we'll have our economy will be stimulated. There'll be more jobs there. There'll be more businesses opening. You know, people say there's no businesses in town. Well, you know what? It's a tough little mix because you really need the residents. You need some demand to drive the business. Businesses don't just come and open up and wait for residents. So hopefully with some of these developments, we'll be attracting what the city has never had. Some empty nesters, some young professionals, some people with disposable income. So, you know, we're doing the best we can with what we have. It's not easy. I'm open to any suggestions. Anytime anybody wants to come down and sit and go over stuff, I'm more than happy to. If you have suggestions, I'm more than happy to listen. Please do.
Mayor, I just want to.
One second.
I just
let
like
him,
to add.
let him finish, okay?
I don't think Mr. Pidot actually mentioned anything about cutting any positions at all or having any layoffs. I did not hear that. Maybe I missed something.
I'm
but
just. Well, I'm
you shouldn't
giving.
be speaking for him.
I'm giving an example.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. No, in fact, I'm not suggesting any layoffs. You said if I could find the 900,000, in this case, it's the 610 that I'm worried about, that you'd be happy to listen. So I'm happy to make some suggestions.
Mr. Pidot, I do have some suggestions as well, if you'd like to hear some of my suggestions.
By all means.
Well, hold on. Hold on.
Sure.
He's up first, and then you can speak, okay? So, or else, if you want to sit down and let him talk, you can.
I'll defer to the
Whatever you'd
council.
like. Okay?
Thanks.
Thank you.
I have one suggestion I would like to share in regards to the mid-quarter budget report. There is a line item in there, miscellaneous budget items here. We budgeted at about $320,000, and through mid-year we've only spent about $100,000, which means there's a difference of about $100,000 miscellaneous budget items. So here we are sitting before the council tonight to borrow $610,000, but maybe we really have to go back to the table and we bring Sal Lombardi here and say, you know what, maybe we only need $500,000. Maybe we only need $400,000. And then when we get to the point where we're out of money, then I think then you could come back to the table and say, hey, do we need more?
Where are you? What miscellaneous budget items, Tony? Where are you?
At the mid-quarter budget report. There is the budget report that you never sent me, and I learned through patch.com that I learned through patch.com
Very
in
cute,
regards
Tony.
to the financing
Very
of the
cute.
city.
Very cute.
But with that said, I really believe if you go back into the budget and figure out where we are mid-year, which is about right now, there's a difference there where we most likely can borrow less money, and I think that's the avenue that the city council should go down. Now, if Mr. Pidot has other suggestions...
And by the way, do you know what belongs in miscellaneous budget items?
You can explain if you like.
No, I'm asking you, do you? Because I'm not sure what belongs in there, and I can guarantee you if there's an expense of $300,000. The what? The what?
Right.
As far as miscellaneous budget items, I don't know what falls under that line. Sal isn't well, But I guarantee you, most of that will be used up by year's end, Tony.
Now, if Mr. Pidot has other suggestions, I'd like to hear those suggestions.
There are a couple others, in fact, from the same report that I was able to get through a FOIL request that was submitted about 6 weeks ago that I received on primary day, coincidentally, a week and a half ago. One is in the mayor's office itself is on track, and congratulations for this, to spend $80,000 less over the course of the year than budgeted. So that's $80,000, assuming that spending continues on pace. Another is on the contingency fund that you mentioned, a small appropriation that may come out of this year, but I noticed that that has $275,000 in it appropriated to date. None has been drawn down. None was drawn down last year, and last year was the first year it existed. So I understand it's nice to have that cash for a rainy day, but why not use that? If we have this ability to borrow more, let's borrow more if and when we need it. Let's use the already appropriated funds to meet the obligations that we already are incurring.
I think I could smell that. Yeah, I think the bulk of the contingency he does at year end, so a lot of that will be used up.
Okay, well, last year was the same amount budgeted, and not a dime of it was drawn down. So I'm saying if it should be used up later on, let's borrow when we need it. We know we need this money now, and we know it's already appropriated.
Because most of that will be allocated at year's end.
Do we know what
Okay,
for?
if you look at other contingency budgets, usually the money stays there, and at the end of the year, that's when he allocates the different amounts from the contingency
Okay,
budget.
just if I'm reading it correctly, it's only existed once before, at least in the last 5 years, last year, and none of it wound up being spent. So it seems that there's sort of a
Contingency
rainy
budget?
contingency
Absolutely
budget.
it was.
Last year, $250,000, and the drawdown, at least in the budget on the city website, shows
No,
as zero.
he drew it down.
Okay, it's not reflected in the city budget
Okay.
as published
I'll
on the
check
website.
with him, but,
And third, again, I would just repeat on your own.
'Cause you have things
resolution
like-
6G today is another $250,000. So if you add these up, you get to around $600,000.
Yeah,
It
but
seems
that's not
like
true. You're
you know-
leaving out the other portion of that, the tank removal, is the retrofitting of gas and putting that in there. So that's.
Okay, I was just going by the mayor said this
the
27,000 compared to 300,000 that was allocated.
No, you missed that. It's 26 for the tank removal, and it's 146 for the other components that go
Okay, so
with
it
it.
leaves us still with about
And some-
140,000.
And there's some other engineering and stuff that with it. So there was some servings, but not a significant amount. Okay.
Well, even if it's a few tens of thousands, add that to these other few
You're
tens of
just
thousands.
cherry picking a few things.
I'm trying to find
okay?
ways that we can reduce the additional tax burden that
Okay.
we're putting on Glen Cove taxpayers that we knew last year when we budgeted this.
This isn't going to reduce the tax burden.
Of course it will.
No.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the debt burden, ultimately the tax
Okay.
burden, because we can't pay for debt
Okay.
service with taxes.
Okay,
But
thank
the debt,
you. It's not going to reduce the tax burden.
we pay for interest with tax revenues, correct?
What's that?
We pay for interest on our debt with tax revenues.
Sure we do.
So it will reduce
pay
both
for-
the tax and debt burden.
Thank you.
Thank you.